Hey everyone, welcome back to Dungeon Brew. Today we're going to be talking about crime and punishment. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Dungeon Brew.
Hey everyone, we're going to be talking about crime and punishment today. This is a subject that we've actually covered already on this channel in regard to the Thieves Guild. And what this is just kind of a building out of the rules that were talked about. It's been almost a year now, maybe more than a year, where we talked about crime and punishment and how to handle that in regard to a Thieves Guild. Well, since we're doing all the Thieves Guild stuff this month, it made sense that I would go ahead and build out those rules a little bit more, give them a little bit more substance, and something that you could actually use in your games if you wanted to. Before we get started, I do want to mention that the crimes and the punishments associated with them are largely based off of medieval practices, which usually involved some form of torture. So please be warned. There may be some triggers for certain people who may come across this video. The next thing is that even though I'm going to have some of the information popping up on screen around me while I'm talking about it, if you want to get your hands on the actual PDF, then you can follow the link in the description below to our Patreon where you can download this PDF for free. So it's completely free, there's no cost or anything else like that. That's just kind of where we host our documents because it's a little bit easier to disseminate it to people. And if you want to follow the Patreon, you can do so, and most of our posts do end up being public so that you can access information and download it whenever you'd like. Okay, so let's get into crime and punishment and what it means for having a ttrpg game or a Dnd game in which you're actually using this. I think that the first thing is why would I create this, or why would we use this? For me, it's about realism and immersion. I don't really most of the time actually, I can't remember a time where I've actually implemented a punishment toward a player who has committed a crime in the game. For the most part, this is almost like a way that I can focus on the narrative a little bit more. I can add in information that helps the players to feel like there is something actually going on in the world and there are actual punishments for crimes that are being committed. So sometimes this is just putting it in front of the players and saying, hey, listen, you know that this type of crime is met with this type of punishment, or you can have a scene in which the players go into a courtyard and a punishment is being administered to somebody who has committed a crime. Those types of things are generally where I use this type of document, but having the actual substantive information just available to you kind of creates a situation where the players are like, oh wow, the world does have an acknowledgement of what these crimes are and what the punishments are for them. So when it comes to the way that you actually incorporate this or use this document, there's a couple of ways that I think that you can probably do it. I mean, you can literally just pick it up and use it if you want to. It's kind of generic and general in a lot of ways, but there are some specific things that may not make sense with your lore or with your setting, so you may have to adapt it a little bit to your setting. And there's a variety of ways to do this. So for one, some of the crimes that I have in there may not be crimes for you. So in the adapting to magic section, I have rules about how if you don't have a license to practice magic, then there are punishments associated with that. In your world, you may have no magic. It may be a no magic world or a low magic world where magic is not really thought to be real or it's not an issue. Or you might have a high magic setting where there's no requirement to have a licensure to cast magic. Or you might be in the type of magical setting like in Forgotten Realms and Thay, where casting things like necromancy or curses or other things like that really aren't seen as being out of the ordinary. So it's acceptable for people to cast magic like that. The other thing that I do in a number of places is I have scaled punishments. So something like breaking curfew may result in being fined the first time and then birchings or lashings or other types of punishment the more often that those types of crimes are committed. However, you can also get away with the idea that maybe a more severe or authoritarian style society is going to start with a birching or a lashing for committing crimes, and fines aren't really entered into it, or it's automatically a fine plus a birching. But you can also go the opposite direction, where you have certain crimes where you never really escalate into those more severe styles of punishment that are almost torturous in nature. So you really kind of get to play around with this a little bit in terms of how do I want this to reflect the specific society that I want to represent. Not only, you know, nation by nation or region by region, but also in the specific world that you want these types of crime and punishment to be applicable. So one of the other things that I do want to pay attention to, and this is really kind of like first and foremost, is if you are intending to incorporate something like crime and punishment, it's a conversation you have to have with your players pretty early on, and there's a number of reasons for that. For one, it's the first thing that I said really when it came to talking about this video, which is that there's some torturous aspects to some of the punishment if you're sticking true to medieval style settings, and that can be a trigger for some players, and you may not want to incorporate that. Some people may be sensitive to it. The other thing is that for some of these punishments, they kind of remove player agency, or they are going to affect player characters in the long term or the short term in ways that not all players are going to be comfortable with. Some players are all for jumping into a world that has this kind of gritty realism where their characters can be, you know, permanently scarred from things that have occurred to them, and that's fine. You know, that's the kind of world that I tend to play in. Those are the type of players or characters that I'm used to dealing with. Not everybody is comfortable with that. So making sure that everybody's kind of on board for it is really something that you should be aware of, or you should pay attention to early on in the process of incorporating this rule set into your game. Alright, so that is all that I have in regard to crime and punishment. Again, this is just meant to be something to help you build your world, build your narrative. It's something that is free, and you are free to grab from our Patreon. If you like the resource, if you like the video, if you want to support the channel, please consider liking, subscribing, leaving a comment down below. If you want to follow our Patreon, you can do so publicly. It costs you nothing, and you'll be notified anytime that we create additional resources such as this one. And until next time, happy gaming.
Dungeon Brew.